We've got Mike Schaefer now, I believe, on the phone from Husker247. Schaefer, what's going on, man?
Well, now I wasted that shower for no reason.
What'd you do? Would you shampoo the beard?
No, I just wanted to look presentable for your stream, viewers. And instead, I could have just been my schlubby usual self here on the radio.
Our olfactory nerves don't work through the stream, Shafe, so you could always trick me.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I wasn't planning on going outside today anyways. I don't think I can get too far away from, portal season here. But I guess I'm clean, so I got that.
Are you getting any snow in Beatrice?
Well, I live in northwest Kansas City, thank you very much. But no, there's no snow down here. Just the sun has come out a little behind the clouds. And,
we got none of that. Look at this.
It just seems like it's going to be a nice, 45, 50-degree day over here.
Really? We have flurries and it's overcast.
That's because he's almost in the south.
Closer to the equator, Damon.
So, yeah, according to Ravi, that's where I'm from too, basically. Never mind. Never mind. Ravi was just doing his best David Duke impersonation this morning.
Whoa, easy. Easy. Shafe, wow. If you were to show me a video of people that sort of look like me that were not speaking English, would you assume I knew what they were saying?
Oh.
No, generally not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just wondering.
Whatever.
It's a total hypothetical situation and definitely not something that happened on air this morning.
No.
No.
Hey, fortunate to be here, Shay. Fortunate to be here. So, anywho, Shay, I was telling Ravi, because, obviously I read your stuff, and we got into this spirited conversation about redshirting, and if you're coaching, do you get what you can get while the getting's good, right? If you're a player, do you get while the getting's good? If you're a coach, hey, short shelf life, I got to maximize. And so we got into this kind of this mindset. But for you, kind of your premise was, why redshirt anymore? Which I wouldn't call it a hot take, but, I mean, if coaches start to think like that, it could get interesting. You could get young in a hurry.
Well, yeah, and it's not that I don't think there's a value in redshirting. It's that I just think percentage-wise, you're trying to bank on a year that you're unlikely to actually have in your favor. So if you're Matt Rhule and you're looking back on it, I'm guessing you'd rather have played Riley Van Poppel all of 2024 because there's no guarantee that Riley Van Poppel is going to be here in 2028, so or 2027. So to me, and same with James Williams the year before, and it's not that these guys would have come in and wrecked shop and won a game by themselves and et cetera, but it's more the mindset that you have to probably derive as much value from every player every season. It's just like a total different mindset. I have a tough time believing that you can be geared towards being a developmental program in the way that college football has now changed. Like you definitely need to be able to develop, and you want to try to keep players for as long as you can. But I don't think you have the luxury of, well, we'll throw a red shirt on this guy. We'll see what he looks like at the end of his red shirt, freshman red shirt season. We'll see what he looks like that next year, and then we'll be able to make a decision. I just don't think you have that anymore. I think, it's imperative to play a guy like Carter Nelson early, because if you would have redshirted him, who knows what happened, or if you're even going to use that year on the back end. So to me, it just makes sense to try to derive the value and play these players as early as you're capable of doing so. Obviously, some players are going to redshirt because not everybody's going to be able to get in for 5 games. Some players are going to redshirt because of medical reasons. But I just don't think it makes sense going into the year to be like, well, that guy needs a year, so we're going to just go ahead and leave him on the bench.
Shave, can I make the argument to you that while you're...
He always asks that. Tell him no. Tell him no. So you always say, can you make it? Tell him no.
Well, if the argument is no, then say no.
I like to think that I'm the sort of person that you can always make an argument to, whether I'm going to agree with it or not.
So
I
start
don't
with
know.
that
But
supposition.
I enjoy I enjoy listening to people, giving their explanation or their opinion. So that's Ravi, you're always able to make an argument to me. Just know that you have carte blanche, and that's the part.
Could I get you to understand the argument that you are giving something up in the short term, and it may not be in your interest as a coach with that particular player, but you do believe it's in the best interest of the player, and long term you think that will work out the best for you. Is that a viable argument in your mind?
It's viable, but is going to be situationally dependent. Would it have been better for Carter Nelson to redshirt and only play 4 games this year? Probably. Is it better for Carter Nelson that he was able to get some experience and played in some of these games, was in on a critical down, even though it didn't work? Probably. So it kind of, I think you can push the conversation either direction. And I think there's going to be individual cases where a guy just clearly is not going to be able to help you, and you have to make that determination. But if you're on the fence, I guess it's sort of how I view it, I would always lean towards just playing them and not using the red shirt.
Sure, and I totally understand that, but let's use Riley Van Poppel for an example, because that's a guy who could have helped you, right? But a guy that obviously they thought it would be better for him long term to redshirt this year, that he would end up being a better football player. My argument would be that if you do that more often than not, in the long term, even though let's say you might lose Riley Van Poppel, in the long term that's going to be better for you and your program.
I think that argument will struggle to survive throughout where college football is headed. I think, it may be a great service to the player, but ultimately, I'm not trying to be a jerk here when I say it, but Nebraska fans won't care about James Williams' extra year.
So here's where I'd push back. So, I don't have an example from football, but there was a sense for a while that if you were a really good pitcher, you would go to Vanderbilt because they were going to take care of your arm, where that was not the case at a lot of college places, that they would kind of overuse you / abuse you in those situations. And Vanderbilt ended up getting better players and better pitchers because they were viewed that way. It's a very long-term play, I get that. But it's not without any sort of case study.
But it also requires years and years of, building that reputation. And while Matt Rhule has a reputation of being a builder and a developer, I don't think that I'm stopping traffic when I'm saying that he has to also develop the reputation now of being a winner at Nebraska. He doesn't have that.
Well, yeah, the wins have to come, right? That's the given.
Right.
None of it works unless the wins come. Like, not shirting the guys doesn't work if the wins don't come either.
And so it's, everything's going to be dependent on trying to derive the most value. Like, there's just, we've been going towards this route anyways, but there's not going to be an overwhelming amount of patience for coaches. There's not going to be an overwhelming amount of patience for players or portal players. And I'm not saying that every situation just has to be the same, but I just don't think you're gonna generate this reputational value out of it. I really don't. It's one, I don't know that you're gonna win enough to be able to sell people like, oh, this is a plan that's gonna work the best for you because Nebraska is doing it, and they're doing it at such a high level that it's working for all of these different players. I just don't, how many years do we think we have to talk about that happening for it to really, because I'm thinking we're going to need 5-6 years for players to actually be examples of it for Matt Rhule.
Hey, so I talked to Hap yesterday, and I think I liked your example. You actually, I think, used a pretty good example for this, because I think as I talked to him, you used Caleb. And I said to him, I think that's a spot on. It's an uncannily a really good example, because that's a guy that I think they think they're going to get multi-year starter out of. Wasn't ready then, but close to keep there. He was okay with that philosophy. To your point, you're saying, well, what's the difference between Keona Davis and Van Poppel? Nebraska would say, Van Pop's going to be a multi-year starter. I want to save the year. I think he's going to stay. You played Keona Davis with maybe thinking you could do the same thing to him next year, and he still left anyway. So how important is it, Schaefer, in your philosophy to make sure, or to try to make as sure as possible, that you know the type of personality that you're dealing with?
I mean, I think that's the critical thing, and that's the part that makes it hard to just, one size doesn't ever fit all.
The discussion is fast. Like, you're not crazy, but you do have to know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm
going to put that. I'm going to put that on my resume. Not that I'm applying for jobs, but if I was.
It's easy to use Carter Nelson. Like, Carter Nelson, his family can say that now, but what if they would have told him initially, hey, you're going to redshirt? They'd have been mad.
I mean, some people were mad that he didn't play more anyway.
Go ahead, Schaefer.
I think you just have to, you're going to have to weigh the situations. But I think, like I said, if it's a coin flip, just play him the 5-6 games. You get as much value out of the player as you can in that season, and then you're going to see where the chips are going to fall when the portal comes around. I mean, that's a really tough part about all of this. Now, the conversation can change again once we get into contracts, and I'm wondering if there could be stipulations in there. I'm wondering if you basically, if someone red shirts, if there's a way that you reward them for that red shirt, and then that you're going to guarantee that they end up sticking around. If they play X amount of years, they trigger a bonus of some sort. Like, there's ways that you can be creative about this once contracts are actually introduced to how all of this works. But for right now, in the wild, wild west of anyone who's going to do anything, including float going into the portal, actually go into the portal, claim they're going to go in but never then do the paperwork. Like, there's all sorts of different ways that, people can manipulate things right now. I'm just thinking, if Nebraska's going forward in the 2025 class with the guys that they just signed, I think there probably needs to be the frank, honest discussion at the front end of it. Hey, we're not planning on any red shirts. We'll see how things go, because I just don't think that you're going to be able to maximize it. I mean, of the 20 guys that signed last Wednesday, how many do we think are still going to be on Nebraska's roster when we're having this conversation in December 10th of 2025? Like, I would submit to you that it's probably going to be less than 15, just the way this works.
Hey, listen, so, Schaefer, with all these guys, right, I mean, Iowa's got a top shelf safety. Well, I think I don't know how good Iowa's got a guy in the portal. Ryan Williams is in the portal. Like, these guys are in the portaling, right? Playing the fiscal game. Sometimes it's not always because they are unhappy. Is that further reason to just shoot your shot, kind of like what you're saying, or is it reason to make sure you know what you're dealing with if you're going to lose them anyway?
I think you're basically going to try to get as good of a read on a personality as you can. There's just no way to know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
If you would have asked any of us at the beginning of November if we thought Emmett Johnson would go into the portal because he was going to derive more value by the end of the month, I don't think any of us would have guessed that. Like, it just takes a couple games for someone to change their outlook or who they are as a player. I mean, look at the teams that are recruiting James Williams. Look at how we view – like, I thought James Williams was a really nice player, but to somebody like Ohio State, he is the perfect complementary piece to add to your defense, whereas at Nebraska, you probably need him to be a little bit more – it's just we're getting into the kind of the baseball mentality of it. The rich are going to be able to go get the perfect setup man, while other teams just have to hope that everything goes perfectly for them to be able to compete at the same level. Like, it's just the unique open market setup of this changes, I think, the dynamics of how you run a program. And I think, one, Nebraska is positioned in a better way than some because Matt Rhule has spent time in the NFL. And two, you have to adjust. This isn't the same college football world that he left, and he knows that. And I think he's been pretty open about that.
Yes, I agree.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer, Husker247. Schaefer, I do. So I guess here's the problem I sort of have with the argument is I think you're right. I think there's going to be the rich get richer, and that there's a certain way those teams are going to run their programs. but there's also always been teams that operated differently that have a high level of success. I mean, do you think those teams just will cease to exist? I guess I don't understand that part, because if we're using the baseball analogy, like, Tampa still has made a couple World Series doing things dramatically differently than everybody else on the planet.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have to figure out what the market inefficiency is that you're going to exploit. And that's going to have to be the thing that Nebraska has to figure out, or these other programs have to figure out. And I think Nebraska's in a better position than some, but they have to still go win games and develop the reputation of being somewhere that people want to go. But as we get further into this, I think you're going to see teams take different strategies to try to. You're going to probably see some teams who try the Indiana thing of you just load up on players from a good FCS program and you try to maximize those results. I mean, you're going to see some teams that only want to take guys that come from, the bread and butter blue blood programs from the Southeast. Like, you're just going to see these different strategies emerge as to how people are going to try to combat the realities of the financial disparity that's going to exist in this system.
Schaefer, as you look at specifically the transfer portal guys for Nebraska, I know the Emmett Johnson situation was kind of strange. He's in and he's out before the portal even actually ever opens up. Has there been a name that has just flat out surprised you yet at this point?
I mean, they all have enough context to them that no, there's not been one where I've just been completely surprised. I mean, I think, I have my own curiosity as to the decision that Daniel Kaelin made before clarity was reached with Dylan Raiola, and I know that some people are going to find that statement odd, but I'll just leave it as to what it is. And then Keona Davis is the one where it's like, okay, was he that attached to Terrence Knighton and Tony White, or is it he didn't have the recruitment play out exactly how he wanted last year because he got re-recruited twice leaving the Washington program? Is he looking for something else? Because that's a guy where it's like, I don't know that Nebraska could have done a single thing differently and kept him. So that's probably the one guy where I'm like, all right, that one maybe I wasn't prepared for, because it seems like you did everything you could. You made him feel like he was going to be a big part of this. And is it just as simple as he doesn't have a defensive line coach right now? So that Keona Davis is probably the one at this point. Everything else, I think you can kind of rationalize.
Yeah. So and that's interesting too, Schaefer, because like Davis's parents just got to Lincoln, so it's I don't. That one is definitely interesting because I don't know.
Well, you would know better than I would, but I had never heard any unhappiness.
Listen, I was caught off guard. Like when I tell you his parents were in Lincoln, they were in Lincoln. Like looking at spots, like I don't know, but that wouldn't be a situation that I was surprised, where you just need to come to a level of understanding because you feel like you're operating in uncertainty, right? So if that's the case, it may just be a sit-down, because that's really all Emmett was. That's why he didn't panic over Emmett, Schaefer, just because for him it's not about money. Like, he just wants to know that he's worth something to you in terms of what you may think his value is, right? We saw his family members say relationships over money, right? Like, he wasn't going to be a high-maintenance guy. He just wanted to know where he stood, and it was like that from the jump. So I don't know if – oh, Keona will be interesting. Very interesting. Wouldn't surprise me if he came back.
You're going to have players that, maybe every year it makes sense for them to just enter the portal to see kind of what the relationship is financially, or what their role is going to be, or what it is. We're just in such a unique, area right now in college football where I think we're sort of between what's coming and what has been, and it's just kind of this massive gray area where people are going to have to make that decision for themselves.
Schaefer, do you think it's kind of like in the NBA where people will enter the NBA draft 2 or 3 times knowing they're not going to get drafted, at least the first couple, but they go through the process, they go through the workouts, they get feedback, and then they hop back to their – like, is that sort of the new – like what you're describing with that? They'll just hop in the transfer portal every year and see what their market is?
I think that's a real possibility. I really do. I mean, I think some of it is just like to go gauge where the interest would be, like what the opportunity would be, like what financially it looks like. I mean, I don't think I'm surprising anyone when I say this, but like, if you're looking to get a raise, usually the best way to get a raise is to have someone else want to hire you away from where you're at. So, a lot of people don't just give raises because you're performing well. And some do, obviously, but sometimes you have to push the issue by appearing like you're going to leave, and I could see that as a real strategy. A lot of assistant coaches have made a ton of money doing that. Some that I am very familiar with that coached at Nebraska because they knew exactly what they were doing while doing it. So it's not just the athletes that are thinking that way.
That's Mike Schaefer, Husker247. Schaefer, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
Appreciate you, Mike J.
All right, guys, have a good one. Thanks for having me on.